Welcome back, guys. This is Jason, KM4ACK. Today, we're going to take a look at building a Raspberry Pi 4 for ham radio from scratch. Stick around, and we'll get right to it. So up until now on the channel, we've covered a lot of different tutorials on how to do this or that. But I often get an email from somebody brand new that says, okay, which video do I start with? How do I do this in a step-by-step order? And up until now, I haven't had anything like that. So I decided that I'm going to be moving to the Pi 4 over the Pi 3, and I thought I would just go ahead and do a video on the step-by-step instructions for getting that done. In addition to that, I've created this website here, and there will be a link to this site down in the description below. It'll be getting started, Raspberry Pi, something along those lines. But we'll get that down in the description below. Now, what I've tried to do, the goal is to create this tutorial so you can literally copy and paste step-by-step instructions to get your Raspberry Pi up and running. Now, this will take at least a couple of videos, maybe 3. This is not going to cover configuration of every single application out there. But this is intended to get a base system built and include WinLink. I believe WinLink is a fundamental requirement, or at least it is for me. So we will be covering that, at least the basics of getting that up and running in this tutorial. So I'm going to skip through the 4 words. You guys can read that when you go to the link down below. What I have done is I have downloaded Raspbian Buster with desktop. I don't need this full-blown version that they have here. I just need the desktop version. So I've downloaded that. Now, guys, don't use the noobs download. It's super easy, I guess, to flash a card with it. However, it installs a lot of extra junk that just kind of gets in the way of our system. Let's try to keep our systems to a minimum and try to help them run as fast as possible on these little single board computers. So this is what I've started with, and I'm going to scroll on down. We are in the initial setup phase for the computer. So again, I flashed the card. I've enabled SSH. And I've done a video on that. This actually links to the video if you need to know how to enable SSH before you ever boot it. And then I inserted the card into the Pi and booted up. So now I need to SSH into the Pi, and we're going to take care of turning on VNC and setting the screen resolution. Now, you do need your Raspberry Pi plugged into your router with a Cat5 cable so that it can grab the IP address. If you don't have a monitor hooked up, you have no way of getting in and controlling it except over the network, and it's not connected to our Wi-Fi yet. So I'm going to jump over to my router, and I'm just looking through the current DHCP leases. You'll have to figure out how to do that on your router. I'm not proficient on all the routers out there. I just happen to know the Arden routers pretty well. But this is it right here, the Raspberry Pi, and this is my IP address. I'm just going to copy that address, and let's head over to the terminal window. Now, I'm running a Mac. If you're on Windows, you could use an application like Putty. Do a Google search. It's a free download. But I am running from a Mac, so I'm just going to use the built-in terminal window to initiate the SSH connection. So I'm going to say SSH, give it a space, pi at, and I'm going to paste in that IP address that we just copied. I'll go ahead and hit the return key, and it's going to ask me for my password. That's a default password because we haven't been into the system yet. So here I'm going to enter Raspberry, and that'll bring us in. Once I'm logged into the Raspberry Pi, I'm going to run sudo raspi-config and go ahead and hit the return key. And that's going to bring us into this menu here. So first thing we're going to do is enable VNC. So I'm going to come down to option 5 using the arrow keys on my keyboard and press enter. We'll come down to VNC, press enter again, and now I'm going to use my tab key to highlight yes, and then I'm going to press enter on my keyboard. That's going to come back and tell me that the VNC server is now enabled. Enter again to say OK. And now let's come down to number 7, the advanced options. And we'll come down to resolution. And I always like to pick the very bottom one, 1920 by 1080. I'm going to press enter. And it tells me that that's been set. Enter again to say OK. And then I'm going to use my tab key to highlight the word finish. And we'll go ahead and press return. It's going to tell us that we need to reboot for everything to take effect. So I'll go ahead and reboot this, and we will be right back. Okay, while we're waiting on the machine to finish rebooting, you'll see that we did these steps here in that last section. We did go ahead and perform the reboot. Now we need to use our VNC Viewer on your PC or your Mac to go ahead and connect to the Raspberry Pi. And this is a link here, so if you don't have the VNC Viewer, you can click on it. It'll take you to the appropriate website where you can download that software. Once we get VNC'd in, we're going to be doing these steps here. So we're just going to complete the setup wizard. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our VNC Viewer. Here's the IP address. Now, if yours is completely blank here, you could simply type that IP in here as well. Go ahead and press enter, and it's going to bring up the login screen. So username is Pi, and the password is the default, so Raspberry. Once you're logged in, you'll be presented with this information here. Now, this is a warning that we've got SSH enabled and the default password for Pi has not been changed. Not a big deal. We're about to take care of that. So we'll just say OK. And we'll go ahead and press next. This is our setup wizard that will always run on a brand new Pi. So we'll go ahead and click the next and choose your country, language, and time zone. And for me, I'm going to say use the English language and the US keyboard and press enter. Or click next, rather. Give it just a second so it can set up your location, your time zones, and all of that. And then we'll get to the next screen. On the next screen, we're going to enter a new password. So choose whatever you want here. Make sure it matches when you type it twice. Now, when you log in the future, instead of using that Raspberry, which was the default password, you'll be using this password here, whatever you choose for that password to be. We'll click next. I don't have a black border around my desktop, so I'm just going to click next again. And now it's searching for Wi-Fi networks that it can see. So as soon as this pops up, I'm going to go ahead and select one of the wireless networks here in my shack. Let's just go with that one for now. Click the next button and it'll ask you for the Wi-Fi password. Enter the password and click next. Now it's going to try to go ahead and connect, and you'll see right up here that this changed from 2 arrows to this Wi-Fi symbol, so we know that it is connected now. Next thing it asks is, do we want to update the software? Absolutely, we want to update the software. So we'll go ahead and click next here. This is going to take anywhere from 15, 30, 45 minutes, so go have a cup of coffee, and I'll be back with you guys as soon as this finishes up. Okay, so after your Pi has finished its updates and you've rebooted the system, we're now back to the desktop. Let's check the website again and change host name. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do this. You don't have to do this step, but I like to have different host names for each of my Pis because I've got like 7 of them sitting on the network. If they were all named Raspberry Pi, I'd never figure out what was what. To do that, let's go to the Start menu, Preferences, and we'll come down to Raspberry Pi Configuration. And right here, I'm going to call it Video Pi. That way, it'll be different from everything else on the network. Now, it's going to ask me to reboot Typically, I would say yes, but in this case, just for time's sake, I'm going to say no. We're going to be doing plenty of reboots as we go through this, but on the next reboot, that'll happen. Okay, so next up, we're going to just double check and make sure that everything is up to date. So I'm literally going to copy and paste commands as we go through this. So let's go ahead and open up our terminal window, and we'll paste in that first command. This should just take a couple of seconds because I know everything is up to date. And while we're waiting on that, I'll go ahead and grab the next command, which is the upgrade command. And this just verifies that everything is up to date. Should you have run into any errors when you did it with the setup wizard, going about it this way, you would go ahead and get your system up to date and correct the error that you might have seen. I have seen the setup wizard a time or two not be able to reach the website and wouldn't do the updates. But those first two commands just verifies we have everything up to date. So we're going to clear the screen with a clear command. Let's head back over here. Now, the next thing I like to do is get the hotspot installed. And the reason I like to do this, remember guys, I don't use monitors and keyboards on my Pis. They're always headless. So when I'm in the field, I need a way to connect to the Raspberry Pi. So what this does, and there is a video here for reference, it's got a little bit more information in it. But what this does is this allows the Raspberry Pi to generate its own Wi-Fi hotspot that I can connect to with another device and then use VNC to see and control the Raspberry Pi. So again, we're literally going to copy and paste every command going through here instead of typing everything out. So I'm just going to bounce back and forth. Now, be careful on this. Occasionally there is a scroll bar at the bottom. Make sure you get all of each command so that we don't run into any errors. So next thing we're going to do, we just downloaded the script. The next thing, this next command is going to make this script executable. So we'll go ahead and paste that in, and then we'll go ahead and run the script with the next command. Now this will take a couple of seconds because it's going to install a couple of other pieces of software that we need. So I'll be right back as it when it asks us for the first question. Okay, so as the script continues to run, it's going to come up and ask you for the password that you want to be used with the new hotspot. So in other words, whenever you try to connect to it, say with a tablet, you're going to enter this password. So we'll just give it, let's use my call sign, KM4ACK, and then we'll give it a couple of numbers. Now, do note here that the password needs to be between 8 and 63 characters long. If it's too short, it will not work. We'll go ahead and press return. It's going to ask if that is correct. We'll say yes, and the script will continue to run. Now, in just a couple of other seconds, it's going to ask you for the Wi-Fi SSID that you would like to connect to. This is the one already in your shack. So you'll go ahead and enter that here. One of the Wi-Fi's already in my shack is KM4ACK-portable. So we'll hit return after you've given it the name, and then it's going to ask us for the password for that one. So we'll enter that, press enter. It's going to ask me if it's correct, and we'll tell it yes. Last thing to do is we do have to do a reboot to make get everything up to date after that's installed. So I'll go ahead and type the reboot command and press return. Now that the Pi has rebooted, our hotspot is installed, and you'll see that my new host name is showing up right here. All right, let's see what's next in the steps. All right, so we did the reboot. Now, this is a test section for the hotspot. So we'll just copy this, and all the directions are down through here. I'm going to go a little quick with this just for time's sake, but everything is documented in on the web page. So I did this, which tells us to change up our SSID. I'm going to copy and paste the next command here, which restarts the hotspot. So the hotspot will look for a SSID to connect to. If it can't find it, then it'll go ahead and generate its own hotspot. And it looks like that did happen. So if I look here, this is the Wi-Fi for my Macintosh. So I'm going to click on that, and I should see a new one that pops up called RPI Hotspot. So we know that the hotspot is doing its job. So let's see what is next. Now it's going to tell us to undo what we just did so that it'll go ahead and reconnect to the one in our shack instead of running the hotspot for the time being. So again, all of this is documented on the web page. So if I'm going a little quicker than you would like, reading through the web page will give you everything that you need to know. But I'm literally copying and pasting out of these gray code boxes. So we'll go ahead and paste in the next command, and you'll watch right up here in the top right. This will change from 2 arrows, and we'll get the Wi-Fi symbol again here in just a second. Okay, now we have the Wi-Fi signal. Let's go back and let's see what the next section brings. So the next thing we want to do is we want to automate that hotspot so that the Pi will check every 5 minutes, see if it can see your shack's Wi-Fi. If it can, it's going to connect to it. If it can't, it's going to create its own hotspot. Now, I really like this, especially in my Jeep where I run the Raspberry Pi. That way, when I pull into the garage, it just automatically connects up to my shack's network. And when I leave, it goes ahead and generates the hotspot that I need to connect to when I'm out and about. So we're going to use this command here, which is crontab-e. So we'll paste that in. Now, this is the first time that I've run cron on this machine, so it's going to ask me which editor I want to use. Of course, I'm going to pick the easiest one because I'm most familiar with Nano. If you know something about the others, go ahead and choose one of them. But I'm going to choose one right there and hit enter. And we're going to copy these 2 lines here. And this tells us to scroll to the bottom of this file, so you can use your up and down arrows to get to the bottom. I'm going to press enter just to give it one more blank line there and paste in that command. We'll press Control X, Y, and enter to get out of that. And that takes care... Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's one more thing to do. This is what I like to do. The next section... we'll go ahead and copy this command and paste it in. And I'll show you what this does here. A while ago, you remember seeing that RPI hotspot? Well, I like to name mine something different. I like to call mine something different. So I'm going to come down to this line and just take out that RPI hotspot. And we'll just call this, oh, I don't know, Video Pi. I'm going to press Control X, Y, and enter. Now, if we went back through the test section for the hotspot, when we looked at it up here, we wouldn't see that RPI hotspot anymore. What we would see then is what I named it, which is called the Video Pi now. Now, that should take care of all of our hotspot connection. So, let's move on to the GPS install. Now, note about the GPS, if you don't have one and you're wondering which one I used, you can click here or down here again. That'll take you over to Amazon where you can get the same one I use. I think they're about 12 or 13 bucks. It will take them a little while to get a lock the first time you plug it up. And if you're using the one that I use, you'll know that the GPS has a lock on the satellites because there will be a green light flashing on the dongle itself. Before you've done anything to install or configure it, once it gets a lock, that green light will be flashing. But let's go ahead and get everything installed for this. Now I have a new script that I've written, but we're going to go ahead and paste in the first command, which just changes directories. We'll grab the next one, which was my new install script that I've worked up. Just makes doing this a whole lot easier. So we'll paste that in, let it download. Next line, or the next command rather, that we're going to copy is going to make that script that we just downloaded executable. And then the last line is going to actually run the script. So we'll paste that in and hit return. Guys, you see what I mean about it's super simple? I mean, literally, I'm copying and pasting off of the website to get the base of my system set up and installed. Okay, and once it finishes up, it's going to ask us if we would like to reboot. There's also instructions for some of this over on my GitHub site, but everything you're going to need is actually on the web page as well. So we'll go ahead and say yes here and give that a second to reboot. Okay, I was hoping we could get through a lot more today than we did, but I do want to, make sure that everything gets thoroughly explained as we go through it. I'm not explaining, step-by-step commands the way I normally do, but the way I've listed them out on the web page, and the web page has great instruction on it, you can literally copy and paste your way through this. We'll pick up, though, in the next video and carry on, guys. Until then, 7-3.